Okay, so I just finished inspecting 8699 Wall Street, and overall impression of the house is wow, it's really it's a really well kept house. Um, it seems like you come across families that live in a house really hard and wear out stuff, and there's walls that are dinged and floor trim that's beat up. Well, this house didn't appear to be that way at all. It seemed like whoever was living in it over its whole lifespan has very well taken care of it, and they weren't living hard on it. So I was really impressed with that. I like that a lot. The house seemed to be well built. Didn't see any issues as far as just poor craftsmanship or whatnot. So the house was put together well. It was kept well. So I think it's going to be a great house to move into. I will show you some clips of all the little things that I found, and I don't think that there was anything major. There's some changes that do need to happen, but all pretty minor. So I'll go through those clips, and then we'll talk about where to go from there. Here's a really poor patch job. It's kind of strange why it's right there. It's sitting on the front porch, as you can see, and some reason there was a need to cut that and patch it up, and they didn't do a very good job of it. But I guess it is what it is. Maybe on the inside we'll figure out why it was cut open there. Okay, as I step back, here's what I think. I think that there was a rail that went from this post over to here, and they wanted a little bit more porch space, so they moved the rail back, did a little jog out, and that's what was left. So that's what explains the weird patch job. This back gate here is kind of put together all cheesy. Actually could use some help. It's actually not sitting on any hinges or anything. It's pretty cobbled together. I would just rebuild it, and it doesn't have to be fancy, just needs some help. This outbuilding is good for what it's used for. It is cobbled together using pieces of materials and stuff, but I would just consider it useful as just a storage. It was some kind of this left side, some kind of a bird house or something. Can't really tell, but you can use it to keep some things dry. Alright, it's gonna get a little blurry here, but these grapevines back here are real producers along the fence. So that's pretty neat. I like it. Lots of grapes on the fence. Okay, so we're on the south side of the house, and as you can see, the vinyl siding is wore out on this bottom panel. We're just on the south side. There's a couple more places, and it's just this bottom panel. And most likely what usually happens is somebody gets carried away with a weed eater, but it's not a huge issue, but it's definitely a wore out siding. Okay, so we're obviously on the roof, and one of the first things I look for is how flat is the roof. If it's real humpy and if there's waves, and that shows past signs of damage. And this roof's really flat, so that's a really good thing. The second thing is we'll look at the shingles. We will see how much granules is left. Many times when they get really wore down, then the granules will go away, and that's a sure sign of a roof replacement in need. The third thing is how supple the shingles are. If they're really brittle, then they're really old. I'm on the sunny side, so it's warming up this morning, and these are kind of shown to be supple. The only issue is that I see is there's several places. I say several, about 3, maybe 4 spots where you can tell that somebody has came and nailed down the tabs. Like you can see, these are all nails, and then they just put some goop down. Under these tabs should be a strip of cement, or it's more just tar, and when they get hot they kind of glue themselves down, and they're supposed to hold themselves down to the wind, and clearly this area here was not holding itself down, otherwise they wouldn't have repaired it that way. So that's telling me the shingles are in good shape, the roof's in good shape, but the shingles at some point were not holding themselves down to the wind. So I would have to imagine that the rest of the roof is going to have that problem sometime in the future. It's really hard to put a number on it because we can go 3 years without a real heavy windstorm, but it could just take one and it'll flip some of these shingles up, and then they'll either need to be repaired or replaced. So yeah, we'll have to discuss what that means as far as longevity for this roof. Okay, we are under the house, as you can see, and interestingly enough, my problem here, somebody else found it at one point. It says water pipes by the vent, and that's what we have. So we are looking at a vent up in here to the outside for your crawl space, and we are also looking at 2 water lines. I think this probably goes to the kitchen, and they're right there next to the vent. So underneath your house should stay warm enough not to freeze, but being right next to a vent like that, let's say there was a really strong southerly wind or something blowing into that vent, you have the potential to freeze up right here. So I would recommend having these pipes insulated better, or even shoving insulation and closing off that vent and just not using it. But that could be an issue on a really, really cold, windy winter. Also, something to notice is there is some water staining on a few of these bottom posts and up against the wall. Here's your stain. That's not damage. That post is still good, but it is stained. It's going to tell us that has been some water along this ledge. I'll get back and let's see if we can figure out if that's going to be an issue. So the vents that go into the crawl space, they're right up next to the ground, and we have a gutter that comes down, and this little extension, this white piece here, this extension makes me wonder if it was added a little bit later. So I think that the gutter was probably pouring water right next to the foundation, and water ran right over here and dribbled a little bit into the vent. So I think that explains our staining down below. And over here there's some covers that look like they've been added as well to the vents. So it looks like it's already been mitigated. Okay, so the roof is going to be a little bit hard to give you something that it's going to be hard to pin down how much life you have left in the roof. So as far as the material, the outer portion of the shingles, I think you have somewhere between more than 5 and probably 5 to 10 years for just the outer side. Now that means water penetration and whatnot. That's probably what's normal for that style of roof. But as far as, you know, indications that the wind or whatever has flapped some of the shingles up, it's really hard to know. It's something that maybe they've hammered them all down, or maybe some of them are also loose. They really shouldn't have flapped up like that. So that was somewhat defective. I'm not sure what the story is on that. So it's just kind of a roll the dice kind of thing. Clearly it looks good now, and over the past few years since it's been repaired. It seems to have held up, but that's something that we just can't really put a time on. We could get a windstorm tomorrow and start blowing some more up, and that would cause you to start thinking about putting together a new roof. But it could also last 5, 6, 7, 8 years and you not have any problems at all. So sorry, I can't really pin it down for you. If it was something about the wear and tear to the outer portion of it, then that's a little bit more predictable. I mean, it's anybody's best guess anyways, but it's really, really hard to predict whether the shingles are going to stay down. So it's the best I can give you on that. As far as your water heater and your HVAC system goes, we really couldn't, there's no stickers indicating when it was last serviced. Both of them look clean. Both of them are operating normal, and both of them are about 20 years old. So they're reaching the end of their expected life cycle. Sometimes water heaters last 30 years, sometimes they last 10 years, but so you already got 20 years on it. It's one of those things that I would just plan on over the next handful of years, probably replacing it, and if you get 10 more out of it, then good for you. If you don't, then nobody's going to blame the water heater for failing early. Same goes for the HVAC system, which I kind of feel like it probably has more years than the water heater, just because chemicals and whatnot that they put in our water system can be corrosive in the water tanks. So the heater doesn't have to deal with any of that. So yes, it's they're both reaching the end of their life cycle, but operating normal, and I don't see any sign that they're ready to fail now. So there you go. For under the house and water damage concerns, everything looks normal under the house. There's no damage. Everything seems to be operating the way it should be. There is some water stains that we're talking about here that we shouldn't ignore them, but it's been 20 years and there hasn't been any damage. So, and even having first-hand knowledge of possibly having a flooded yard or whatnot. So I would not worry about it at all. I would say I would check that off the list as being a problem. So looks good. And lastly, you asked about the smoke detectors and whether they were also carbon monoxide detectors, and they are not. So the house has sufficient smoke detectors, but it does not have carbon monoxide, and that can be changed out. Fairly simple. You can use the same wiring. So that's that.